everyone, and welcome to the Manuscript Podcast. This is the podcast where we believe 21st century man controls his destiny, that his choices define his future, and that he writes the script to his own freaking life. I'm your host and fellow man, Reuben Stamper, and as always, it is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you get something out of this episode, consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. So, let's start off hot right away. We're going to start by talking about why men should try and stay busy in order to remain happy. Let's go. So why should men stay busy? Now, before we dive into this, and there's a bunch of reasons I'm going to get into, before we dive into this, I want to define my terms. It's what I like to do on this channel and on this podcast. So, what do I mean when I say men should try and stay busy in order to stay happy? Well, I'm not advocating whatsoever for you to become a workaholic or for you to become some kind of like serial socialite who's at every single party out there. I'm not arguing for that at all. That's not how I am. I don't think it's healthy for a man to work 24/7. I don't think it's healthy for you to say yes to every single party you're offered to go to, okay? What I mean by that is there shouldn't be huge lapses of time in your regular schedule where you have nothing planned. And I'll get a little more into that down the road. But basically my idea is like the less free time you give yourself, the less time you have to meander around, not doing anything, wondering what you're going to do next. If you actually plan out the future and you have things in your future you know you're going to go do, then you have an objective and you're living a purposeful life. My mother-in-law, very bright lady, and she has a bunch of zingers, as she said, but she's Italian, so she's got that in her, which is great. But she has this quote that I heard her say once. She said, "Happy is the man who has limited options." And I was like, oh, wow, that's actually very poignant. I like that. That's very good. And so happy is a man who has limited options. I think it also very much applies here. The idea of basically you're going to not give yourself tons of just what we call free time, which is really time that has nothing assigned to it. If you give yourself less of that, then you have less of a chance of actually, just wasting that time because you actually have something lined up to do. Now, this idea of free time, like in America, we totally idolize it. And I'm going to say something crazy and say we should get rid of that concept. Why is that? Because I think this idea of like, oh man, I just have to have a certain amount of free time in my life, I think that idea leads to a more meaningless and a more sad life than if you were to say, "Oh, I'm actually going to take agency. I'm going to take action and make sure that I am staying busy." And many of you out there are probably saying, "Reuben, this is ridiculous. You're saying that we should never do anything fun or relax or just kick back and watch a movie." No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm pro having fun. I'm pro watching movies. I am pro all those things. But what I am not pro is living an ambivalent life. And if you are constantly telling yourself, oh, I have to have 3 hours of free time to just do whatever I want, what are you really going to do? Probably the path of least resistance. You're not going to actually do meaningful things that you enjoy and that make memories. I'm going hiking tomorrow in a state park that's a couple hours away, but I called up two of my guy buddies. I was like, hey, we should go together, and just do some hiking and stuff. That'd be really great, and that would make some awesome memories. They were totally like, yeah, let's go. And very excited for that. But I had to plan it out. I had to take action with it. And I am as much to blame here as anyone. When I think of like free time, 9 times out of 10, what happens is I do the thing that seems easiest because I'm like, oh, this is my kickback time. This is my free time. And I think I just need to erase that idea from my head. You don't need free time. You need planned time to do meaningful things and to do the things that you love that actually enrich your life, that bring you joy and excitement or peace or whatever feeling that the things you love doing, brings about for you, that gives you that feeling. And when you actually take control of your actions and you don't just constantly give yourself like free time isn't necessarily happy time. That's what the point I'm trying to get across here. And I think as a culture, we idolize this idea of like, oh, I want a relaxed schedule. I need a lot of free time in my life. I think a lot of times that leads you to live an ambivalent lifestyle. And men were not made to do that. We were made to be productive, to produce amazing things with the fruits of our lives. We were made to be incredible. And I think we really shorthand ourselves a lot of the time. We underestimate what we can do. We think, oh man, I've got to have this amount of time to just lay on my bed and watch this TV show, or else I'm just going to go crazy. And in reality, no, it's the opposite. You should be doing things, doing meaningful things, picking up hobbies that you enjoy that make you a more interesting person, reading a book, doing the things that, yes, bring you relaxation and all that part of life, that bring you that peace that you're seeking, but also to do the things that are going to create lasting memories and that will bring you genuine joy and make you feel fulfilled at the end of the day. So that's kind of my shorthand rant on why I think men should try and stay busy. And when I say busy, once again, that just means to live a present life, live a life where you actually are choosing to do things, and you're not letting the time dictate what you do. You are dictating what you do with your time. So there are 3 reasons that I do want to get into for why men should stay busy, just on a more negative note, I suppose. But one of the things that keeping busy does is it helps you manage stress. I know it sounds counterintuitive. Manage stress and prevent feelings of like discontentment or boredom. I think boredom is a silent killer in our country, quite frankly. I think a lot of guys just aren't doing things and they're sitting around and all of a sudden they start having negative thoughts of themselves and that leads to negative behaviors. And we were meant to do hard things. We were meant to challenge our brain and to challenge our bodies. And this idea of just like not doing a lot of things, it's not good for us. We were meant to do a lot of things. We were meant to do awesome things. And I think that staying busy really helps you with that. Obviously, another side effect of staying busy is increased productivity. Whoa, that's crazy. What? Obviously, that's like a very easy, clear point to see, but it's true. If you were to actually, take the 5 things you want to knock out this week and then write them down and say, okay, I'm going to do this that day, this that day, this that day, you would end your week and you'd look back and you'd be like, damn, I am so proud of all the things I've accomplished this week, And instead, you could have said, well, I'm going to give myself 2 hours of free time this evening, 3 hours of free time this evening, and then you don't end up doing anything. And sure, you watch a show, and I'm pro that. I'm pro sitting down. I love The Office. It's one of my favorite shows. Like, super enjoyable to sit down and watch it. But you need to make a mental decision, like, I am going to watch The Office because it's going to bring about some laughter and some relaxation. But that can't be a default. You can't be like, oh, I have some free time. That means it is office time. No. You should say, okay, maybe I'm going to have a block in my schedule where I am free. How about I make a choice proactively right now to go do something that actually truly matters to me? And maybe that's just sitting down and reading a book, or maybe it's going on a walk in the evening, or working out, or playing basketball with your buddies. Like whatever it is, actually making that mental, conscious choice. That's good. And then the third thing is that staying busy does inevitably lead to social connection. Now, I am quite the introvert, believe it or not. I get exhausted when I'm around a lot of people for a long enough time. I'm good with small groups. I'm good one-on-one. But if I'm at a big party, man, like by the end of that night, I am just exhausted. So I need my time to recharge on my own. But regardless of whether an introvert or an extrovert or any personality type, social connection is crucial for you to actually lead a happy life and to be a man that is fulfilling all the facets of what a good man should be fulfilling. And so, staying social and staying engaged with your family and your friends, that's so important. And if you constantly are just getting into this rhythm of sitting back and quite frankly being lazy and not engaging with the fun things going on in your community, then you're missing out. You're missing out on a fuller, richer life. And that's what I want for you. That's what I want for myself. And the third point I want to make is that, yes, it does help you with social connections. And that's an important thing. So anyways, I hope I have convinced you that you should try and have a busy life in the sense of of having a lot going on because we can handle it. We can handle it, and it actually leads us to be happier, more fulfilled individuals. And yeah, don't shortchange yourself, man. Like we can do more than we think we can. People say that we're only using like 10% of our brain most of the time. Like we have so much room to grow, and by staying busy, you're going to start to realize your potential much faster. So, anyways, that's all I have to say on staying busy. Hope you enjoyed. All right, everyone, we are on to section 2 of the Manuscript Podcast. So, without further ado, according to an article from advisoryboard.com, we are exposed to much higher levels of noise than we ought to be. In a study of hundreds of patients at Massachusetts General Hospital, researchers found that those who lived in places with high levels of transportation noise were more likely to have a highly activated amygdala, arterial inflammation, and experience a major cardiac event in 5 years. So it can affect your heart. Now, why am I saying all this? That may be what you're asking at this point. My wife brought this point up to me, but it's so rare that we actually have true silence in our lives these days. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody, but we constantly fill our lives with noise and noise and noise. And it's funny, I'm talking about this in the past segment. I was talking about why men should stay busy, but on this front, there's also a time and a place for relaxation and calming down and desensitizing yourself for a second. And not being hyper stimulated by all the noise and the visuals around you, but rather just to actually dwell with your own thoughts for a second. That's a scary place to be. It is. And quite frankly, I think that one of the reasons we are constantly shoving more noise into our ears is because we're afraid of that silence. Because a lot of times, at least for me, and this is, I think, a pretty universal experience, when you are sitting in just pure quiet, right? Or just in a very calm setting out in nature or something, you start to think very deeply about yourself. And you start to find some flaws and some things you should probably be working on. And you start to ask yourself some big questions that otherwise you're constantly, masking with all this noise so you don't think about them. But, you're out there and you're like, dang, what's my purpose in life? We don't ask ourselves that question very often. That's a pretty rare question, but it's a big one. It's a big one, and I think we should dwell on it more and think about it more. But I think just taking in the silence and listening to the silence is actually a really good thing for us. And obviously, this whole article, the point it was trying to make is that there's actual health benefits or health detractors, I suppose, things that affect your health in a negative way that can come about from excessive noise exposure. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's an equal amount of bad things that can happen to you if you don't actually embrace silence every now and then, and meditate on yourself a little bit, not like a guru weird way, but just to embrace the silence, sit back, and just think about your life for a second. Think about the person you are, the person you want to become, and to ask yourself some of the bigger questions in life. Once again, what's my purpose? Is there any meaning to all this? Big questions I know are deep and dark, and we don't want to face them and oh, dude, that's for the philosophers over there. I mean, the thing is, they're big questions we all should answer, and those come about, they really do, when you don't have tons of inputs going into your ears, you don't have music and you don't have podcasts. Yeah, see, shut me off for a second, okay? And you don't have screens and just all this hyperstimulation around you. You're just in a very calm setting, and you can just breathe in and hear your breath because it's that silent around you, and just think about life for a second. And it can be very clearing, and it's very calming, right? So anyways, that was my weird rant that came about from my conversation with my wife, where she was like, oh, you should talk about the fact that everyone is constantly having noise in their life right now. And there's a reason why a lot of monks are super chill people. Is because a lot of times they live in silent monasteries, and there are things called silent retreats that people go on. There's a reason for all that. And a lot of times people leave there and they're like, man, I had so much noise in my life, and it's so great to actually reset and to embrace the silence for a second, and to sit in it, and to address the things that come about in my mind that organically just come about in my own mind, not some idea shoved into my head from somebody else. No, like my own thoughts, my own ideas. So, anyways, that's all I have to say on section 2 of the Manuscript Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. Get some silence in your life. It'll make you a happier man. All right, everyone, it's time for section 3 of the Manuscript Podcast, the Reuben Rants section. Today, I'm going to be ranting all against the lack of genuinely interesting bad guys in movies today. Now, bad guys serve a purpose to the viewer. I'm going to get to that in a second, but I want to give you a couple examples. Scar from The Lion King, great bad guy. The Predator, I talked about in a previous episode. I just watched that for the first time. Great bad guy. Like pure evil, great bad guy. Voldemort from Harry Potter, great bad guy. Why? Because they showed some bad traits that you do not want to have as a human being that actually make the protagonist, the hero of the story, actually have a goal and have something to strive for or to strive against, right? And, like in Lion King, it's like Mufasa and all the people like going against Scar because he represents the evil. And I think that one of the things bad guys do in movies for people, and this is particularly true for like children, like the old Disney stuff actually used to get this right a lot of the time, was like there are genuinely bad actors out there. There are people who have ill intent, that have malicious intent, that want to do bad things, to the world or to certain people. Like they exist, and that's a truth. That's an actual truth in our world, unfortunately. But so many of the movies these days just are constantly making out the bad guy as a victim of bad circumstances. And I'm like, that's bullshit. That they are there for a purpose, right? And there are some movies where there's supposed to be a character arc for the villain. I get that, I understand, but like there are certain things like Commodus from the Gladiator movie with Russell Crowe. Such a good bad guy. Like you hate his guts, and he represents so many things that you find atrocious and evil, and it shows you, oh, this is a contrast. I don't want to be the bad guy. I actually want to be the good guy, because the good guy leads a happier and a more righteous life, basically, and the bad guy is constantly, first off, despised by everyone around him, and just has an ugly soul to him, and so it those stories actually push you towards the good. And I'm a big fan of being pushed towards the good. I want that. And so I think it's ridiculous what we're doing with so many of these bad guys, where we say, oh, really, they're kind of bad in maybe the first movie or the first TV show, but they're actually just kind of misunderstood people. And it's like, they killed rooms full of people. Like, no, there are certain things that I think everyone has a chance to redemption, but you're a genuinely bad guy if you do that. And so, anyways, I'm kind of getting off the tracks a little bit here. But the point that I am trying to make is this: we need to bring back bad guys. That I watched Dune 2 recently. Bad guys were actually bad. It was great. There was consistency there. It was like, oh, these people are genuinely evil. That's good. I can actually get behind that movement because I understand what's going on here, and you're trying to make a point that, oh, there's this guy that's good and this guy that's bad. And actually, I also read the book, so I also kind of know that the good guy isn't really a good guy either. But that's what makes the story interesting. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is stop trying to grab cash from characters just by trying to make them into a good guy when they were atrocious people before, and now you're just saying, oh, they're misunderstood, we can forgive them, they're fine. It's like, no, you wrote in their character to be a bad guy, so don't take that away from them. Anyways, that's all I have to say in section 3 of the Manuscript Podcast. Hope you enjoyed. Let's go on to the finish line. All right, everyone, that about does it for this episode of the Manuscript Podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for hanging with me. I'm a little under the weather, so this is kind of a shorter episode, and my throat's kind of sore, so I might have sounded a little raspy, a little bit like Kermit the Frog, So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Have yourself a great day. As always, remember, there's a better life out there. Let's get after it. Peace.